Sub. All right. Welcome back to the Wednesday Word Wad. I'm here with Mike, and today we are going to be talking about diet sodas, or more specifically, kind of chemicals within the diet.
That is correct.
Yep. So I just want to let's start this off with Mike. Do you drink diet soda or any kind of beverage that has artificial sweeteners in it? And if so, which one is your favorite?
I feel like I'm at confession right now.
Yeah, right.
Even though I'm not technically Catholic. Yeah, the answer is yes. I do drink Diet Coke. Little fun fact: back in 2009, I entered into a bet with my brother where we decided not to have any dessert, candy, or soda. We wanted to see who could go the longest, and I actually went 10 years. It was December 22nd, 6:11 p.m., 2009. Went 10 years without having any diet soda.
Okay.
So I used to be very, very against diet soda. I remember my freshman year at college telling the professor that I didn't drink diet soda because it increased my insulin levels, and he just kind of looked at me like, "What are you talking about? You'd be in a coma if that were the case."
Yeah.
But yeah, I do drink diet soda. My favorite diet soda has to be Diet A&W. But I will say, we hung out with some friends, Andre Chaika, Niashe, two other diet soda connoisseurs this past weekend, and I had Diet Barks. Diet Barks was really good, so now I think I need to have a side-by-side.
Oh, that's the other root beer?
It is. Okay. Now, I like Diet Dr. Pepper, not for the taste per se, but just for their social media account. We've had some good banter back and forth in the DMs with them. Okay. So, a fan of them for the friendship. But yeah, what about you?
Yes, I do consume diet sodas.
Mm-hmm.
My favorite, I kind of alternate. I'll go through like three main ones are Coke Zero, Zero Sugar A&W. I prefer that over a diet. I don't know what it is about it. When it's zero sugar it tastes a little bit more, to me, more like the original.
Oh wow!
But it's funny because I don't like the original. Like I had a Coke at a wedding. Accidentally put it into a mixed drink, and the Coke was I could feel the sugar on my teeth.
Yeah. And
I didn't like that. I don't know if that's because I actually knew that it was regular Coke, and I'm so used to drinking diet. But usually the full sugar doesn't do it for me. I almost think that's too sweet. And it's funny because vice versa, my father-in-law drinks normal Pepsi.
Yeah.
And he thinks that the Coke Zero is watered down and there's no flavor.
I agree. So I think Coke Zero is not that sweet.
See, for me, it's perfect.
Yeah.
I don't believe it's too sweet, but it's not water to me.
Yeah, I think they use more potassium benzoate over artificial or over aspartame in the Coke Zero in comparison to the Diet Coke. If you read the nutrition label, the aspartame comes first in Diet Coke. So yeah, it has more of a bite, that Coke Zero.
Yeah, makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's cool.
Mike, what is something that you you have a client and they approach you and either you're drinking a zero-calorie Monster, which has some sort of artificial sweetener in it, or you're drinking a Diet Coke, you're finishing it after lunch, and your client walks in and is like, absolutely, Mike, and not Mike, why are you drinking that? What is obviously, it's very easy for people to kind of lash out and defend themselves. Yeah. What is your approach to that? Yeah,
so here's the deal. Like I kind of mentioned before, I used to think that Diet Coke, kind of like from The Water Boy, where the mom calls everything the devil. I thought diet soda was the devil. I was misinformed. And so if someone else is maybe misinformed or has a differing opinion, look, we're all kind of trying to get closer to the truth together. I have no emotional attachment. Diet soda doesn't pay me.
No.
I think it's a great, tasty beverage. Similar properties to water, but just tastes a little bit better. Not as good for your teeth. That is the one downside, is it does seem to break down the enamel. So usually I approach it with empathy or grace, and I like people to kind of think through their argument. So instead of me just maybe initially lashing out and saying, this is why, and going right to PubMed, which would be easy and fun, the ultimate way to come back at someone on the internet is just send them a PubMed link with no context. I'll usually ask them, why do you think it's bad? What makes it bad? What is bad? And
chemicals, Mike.
Yeah, chemicals. And then usually I'll say, well, which ones and how so? And that usually kind of gets them to think about their own perspective. Oftentimes people, if they have a large emotional attachment to a worldview, such as diet soda is bad, and then you ask a couple simple questions and they don't know how to answer the questions, they freeze, they freak out, and that can maybe stir more emotion. But that usually gets them to ask you your point of view. So I like people to kind of share their thoughts first, be respectful and kind, and I'm pretty open-minded with this stuff, I'd like to think. And then from there, I've looked at quite a bit of literature on this. The World Health Organization just released their findings looking at some of the literature on diet soda, and what they found in particular with aspartame, which seems to be the most prevalent artificial sweetener utilized in diet soda, is that there's no ill effects when it comes to diabetes, when it comes to cancer risk, when it comes to dementia, Alzheimer's, increasing risk of mortality, etc. The only literature that seems to suggest an issue is literature that's been conducted in animal studies. Rats, and I think the literature is great. Like, I'm not going to frown upon animal research, but you kind of have to look at the context of the dosage that was utilized in those studies. And the dosage of aspartame is way higher than any type of dosage that you're going to find in a Diet Coke. Most Diet Cokes, depending on where you go in the country, or other diet sodas for that matter, or in the world I should say, typically have anywhere from 100 to 300 milligrams of aspartame per 12-ounce can. The United States uses a little bit more aspartame in the Diet Coke here than in like Mexico. I think Mexico uses acesulfame K and some other sweeteners, which is why people oftentimes think that maybe one country has a better tasting diet soda versus another. And then when you look at that dosage, so just put in perspective, because 200 is a big number, but I'm going to try to contextualize this in a way that maybe listeners will understand it. A scoop of protein powder is 30 grams. If a Diet Coke has 200 milligrams of aspartame, that's like filling 1/150th of a little protein scoop of powder. It's a very trivial amount. Now, I think we oftentimes have an emotional connection to it because people say, well, I taste the chemicals. That is true. Aspartame and most artificial sweeteners are hundreds of times sweeter than normal sugar. So you need a very low dose to create that very palate sensation. But I think there's an emotion tied to it because you perceive that drastic taste change and you perceive that as not natural and not healthy. But the dosage is really low, in fact. And the World Health Organization set their acceptable daily intake at 9 to 14 diet sodas per day for an individual that weighs 70 kilos, which is about 155 pounds. Now, for me, being 240 pounds, that means I could probably do around 10 to 20, 22, 23 diet sodas per day, depending. If I go to Mexico, maybe I can get a couple extra Diet Cokes. And that number, acceptable daily intake, is set 100 times lower than the adverse effect level. So they're very conservative with these laws. That means I could probably have around 1,500 to maybe 2,300, even more diet sodas per day before I reach the carcinogenic level of aspartame. Aspartame is broken into three things in the body, so I think understanding what happens on a biological level is important in like kind of gaining confidence or lack thereof. Aspartame is broken into methanol, aspartic acid, and phenylalanine before it's absorbed. So you get 8 times more methanol from one tomato. You get 34 times more aspartic acid from one egg. You get 32 times more phenylalanine from 2 ounces of chicken than you do from a diet soda. So again, going back, the dosage that is utilized of aspartame is so low. The derivatives of which it's broken into are found in much higher quantities in normal healthy food. I think right there, that should maybe give some confidence that this isn't going to kill you. Now, make sure maybe you brush your teeth or you're taking care of you have good dental hygiene. Yep. But that's that goes for anything, really.
Yeah. I think it goes to, it's important to note that you mentioned that 200 is a big number and it tends to be a little scary. Without context, and I think that can kind of go with like the kind of nutrition advice that people say if you can't pronounce the ingredient, don't consume it. So Mike just said 3 very big words about how aspartame can be broken down.
Yeah.
And like people might look at that and they might do their extra research. Oh, how does aspartame break down? What does it do in the body? And they see those 3 words and they might think, oh, big, scary words I could barely pronounce, probably not okay to consume. And
Yeah.
that's quite frankly not right.
Correct. Yeah. The people that create these words are scientists that they speak in a different language.
Yeah.
If you look at the chemicals that make up an organic blueberry, there's like 40 different chemicals.
Yeah.
And I guarantee you can't maybe understand or read those well. So don't let your vernacular limit your nutrition per se. Maybe try to become more informed to the best of your ability. But I can understand, based on how the industry is set, based on how social media, look, fear sells.
Yeah.
We see that in the media. We see that in fitness. We see that in nutrition. But just because fear sells, it doesn't mean you have to be afraid.
Yeah.
Now, it's good to be skeptical, and I think it's important. If you go on the World Health Organization and you type in health effects of artificial sweeteners or health effects of aspartame, the report for 2023 will come up, and there's literally hundreds of other links for other PubMed articles that you can read from there, which is kind of cool. But maybe spend some time doing that while you're drinking your next diet soda.
Exactly. Yeah. And I think that kind of goes in with scientists use big words and different language. It's
all Latin.
It's all Latin, and that goes for like medication as well. There's always like the marketing name for it, and then there's always an actual scientific medical term for it. And I think it all kind of carries over. Big words, people are kind of scared of it, and if it's not natural, it's not good for you.
Yeah, correct.
Which we know isn't necessarily the case.
Yeah, no, correct. Like cocaine is natural.
Yeah.
Formaldehyde is natural. You find it in apples.
Yeah.
I'm not going to go like drink formaldehyde out of a bottle, or
No.
I don't do cocaine.
No.
So there you go.
Yeah.
Any other points that you would add to this?
No, I just think that the main point that I just mentioned, like not everything has to be quote unquote natural. Not everything that is natural is good for you, like you just pointed out. And I think that just saying do your own research is a little tough because not everybody knows how to read and understand and comprehend the research. So if you are having trouble understanding it, reach out to a professional.
Yeah, and one thing I will say, there is some caffeine in a lot of diet sodas. The diet root beers generally don't have caffeine, so I like drinking them at night because I don't get lit from it. But there is like 40, 50 milligrams of caffeine, which is not a whole lot in a Diet Coke. But if you are drinking several of them, I'd recommend maybe if you're sensitive to caffeine, don't drink too many at night. Caffeine does really seem to disrupt sleep.
Yeah.
So maybe track your sleep, identify your sleep. If the diet soda is making you too lit so that you don't sleep well, then there could be ill health effects.
Yeah.
But the caffeine also will help you stay full longer if you have it early in the day, and it could actually help with dieting. So I find it makes it easier to cut body fat.
Yep. The 0 calorie options, even though that there's all these scary articles and information out there that people are spreading saying that the artificial sweeteners are bad for you, the benefits from drinking that 0 calorie beverage far outweigh the sugar, the substances and the drinks that contain sugar with the excess calories that more than likely you're not going to make up for later on in the day by eating less because the liquid calories don't really do much for you.
No, they're not very satiating. If you're Michael Phelps and you need those calories, sure, but otherwise,
Yeah.
probably not.
Nope.
Awesome. Well, thank you for joining in today.
Yep. Thanks.
Boom.
Easy peasy.